Bienvenidos al podcast con Ruedas. En este programa escucharás a diferentes personas hablar sobre lo que es ser una persona con discapacidad. Aquí no hay barreras. Aquí cortamos estigmas y son pláticas de vida real. Bienvenidos al podcast con Ruedas. Hello everyone. Welcome to the podcast with Wheels. For the people that are a little bit weirded out because I'm talking in English, I'm talking in English because today we have a very special guest with us. Jasmine, how are you?
I'm doing well, Leo. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for joining us today.
I'm delighted.
The reason why we're talking in English, of course, is because Jasmine here does not speak Spanish, but I was telling her about the show, and she said that she wanted to share her story. And I said, I would love to have you on the show. So if you want to tell us a little bit about who you are and why you're here, Jasmine, that would be awesome.
Yes.
The floor is all yours.
Of course. Thank you, Leo. I'm Jasmine, and I am a master's student at Wayne State University studying social work. And I'm in my last year. I'm very excited about it. And I'm a mother and a wife. And I decided to change career paths after being a teacher for 10 years. So social work is something I'm very excited about, and working with Leo and our team with the Michigan Disabilities Institute. I'm learning a lot, and I'm delighted to be here with Leo today.
Delighted to have you. As you guys heard, I know Jasmine because I work here in Michigan in the Developmental Institute of Michigan with Jasmine, and she's one of my coordinators for my project that I have with them. So this is how I met Jasmine. This is how I know Jasmine. I would like to go a little bit in depth into why you decided to make that change of your career. Like you said, you were a teacher for 10 years. What was the moment that you were like, I want to go into social working and maybe work with people with disabilities? How do you tie into that?
Yes, thank you. That's a good question. I was a teacher for 10 years, and I actually taught English as a second language because I lived in France for about 8 years. And I met a lot of interesting children, adults. I taught from primary school to high school, and I've also taught professionals. And one instance in particular really stood out for me. It was a young child, adolescent. His name was Jesse. He was very bright and inspirational. It was when I was working at a high school in France. And I got really close with the kids there. And unbeknownst to me, Jesse was suffering from mental illness. And he's no longer with us. And because of my teaching at this school and me meeting him made me want to go into social work, because that would allow me to get to know the students a little bit more and to be more involved into the lives of students beyond education, but how they're feeling and their home life, etc. So that's what pushed me into the social work realm, and working with people with disabilities or mental health issues became something I was really interested in, because I thought I can be someone that can help, or just be a calm voice or an encouraging voice for people who are going through difficult times. So that's what led me to where I'm at now.
Of course, of course. I think mental health is very important, and I'm glad that there are people like you to talk about it. Because a lot of people hear the word disability and they think, wheelchairs and crutches and all that stuff. But also, disability means, your brain. And if your brain's not okay, you're not going to be okay. You have to be um, we encourage people to speak up, and if you're struggling with any sort of mental issues, to tell somebody, speak to somebody is the best way that you can move forward with your life, because everybody can struggle with mental health, but if you don't talk about it, it gets worse and worse through time.
Exactly.
What is your now that we're on that topic, what is your advice to people that that say are watching this episode and are struggling with mental health right now and don't know how to get necessarily help?
That's a good question. I would highly recommend telling or talking or using your voice. And I know that's very difficult for some people, especially when you're younger, for example. You feel like adults may not be interested in what you have to say. Um, but also trying to find the courage to speak up and voice your emotions, voice your feelings, etc. For people in school, for example, teachers are a really good resource for anything that's going on outside of education. Maybe they can recommend you to a counselor or a social worker or someone that can help. Um, but I think it's a good idea to be an advocate for yourself. And that's what I've learned in my personal life. Like, if no one else is going to advocate for you, you really have to advocate for yourself. So that's why I really love working with you, Leo, and our team, because you kind of like tell people what you stand for and what you think is important. And I think you lead by example, which is a good example for other people, especially young people who don't think they have the power or the resources that they need. So I think that's the best advice I can give.
Um, thank you for that. That I really appreciate that. And I'm also thankful that we get to work with you. Speaking of working together, my next question will gravitate towards my DEI. What have you have learned towards working with me and our team? What have you have learned so far? Because you only been with us for a little bit, but what have you learned so far?
I've learned so much, so much. Because before working with you, Leo, and the team, I wasn't aware of the resources available for people living with disabilities or the lack thereof, because we just assume people are getting the help that they need. But sometimes we don't understand, especially if we're not in this world or in this group, that it can be hard to find resources, money, funding, or just help in everyday functioning. So I've learned how I need to be more attentive or mindful of people living with disabilities, and how, like you said, it's not just what you see, like someone in a wheelchair or with crutches. It's also, we're living in a world where people have invisible, quote unquote, invisible disabilities, where you can't really see it from for the first degree, from the first level. It's kind of like something that isn't as obvious. And I've also learned um, how there's a lot of people seeking help. So the presentation that we do, Leo, there's a lot of people, especially parents or families with children, for example, or adult children who um, are seeking information or help, resources for living an independent life. And like we say all the time, Leo, independent living is not just living by yourself, but also living independently. And that may include living in your family home. So just learning to be patient with people, patient with myself, especially. It just really taught me how to look at life differently. It's not just rush, 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 and it's not, instant either gratification or instant results, but sometimes you need to like slow down and listen to people more and just meet people where they are, which is not necessarily on the same level as myself. So I learned a lot, and I'm still learning every time we have our presentation.
Yes, I like to give my DDI. I don't know if the people in my DDI will be watching this. I hope so, but I like to give my DDI a lot of credit because I came up with this idea with working with my DDI. There's not a lot of podcasts that goes into disability like this one, so I give a lot of credit to them. Now that you told us a little bit about working with my DDI, I want to ask you, um, speaking of what you have learned, because you did go into this a little bit, that there's a lot of stuff that's missing. There's a lot of stuff that we as people with disabilities um, still need resources on. How can we as a community and people that are not necessarily that don't have a disability can help um, facilitate more resources for people?
I think the biggest help or the biggest influence or support we can give to people living with disabilities is to contact our leaders, our political leaders, our local leaders, to um, put more attention, more funding towards resources that help people with living with disabilities. So contacting your mayor or your congressman, your governor can be a really easy, simple thing to do. Actually, one of my classes, I learned how to contact our people, the people in charge in legislation. So going to the person's website, so that can be Governor Whitmer or someone else, going to their website and using their contact form to ask questions or advocate for people with disabilities, or actually looking on um, the Michigan website for different legislation that's being passed in Congress. So just being mindful of our duty as citizens to help people that may not have a loud voice is a good way to be supportive. Um, what else? Also, people in our families. I think reaching out with people with disabilities to see what they need, because I think we take for granted our ability, our health, etc. So maybe reaching out to people in our families that may have a disability and asking like, what do you need? And what can I help? What can I do to help make your daily life more uh, better in general? So I think those are two good things that we can do as everyday citizens, because we can't do everything, but we can do a little.
Yes, and I like to say that I know that I said this before in the beginning, but I like to say a lot of people take mental health and they brush it off to the side. They think, oh, my mental health isn't important because I have other things to deal with that are more important. And I want to say, and I know that Jasmine will back me up into saying this, is that if your mental health isn't your first priority, that all of the stuff around you is not going, it's going to fall apart. I know that sounds blunt, but it's gonna fall apart. So what we wanna share with people on this episode is mental health is very important. Like Jasmine said, um, if you don't have resources, reach out to people and just letting people know how you're feeling. Say to people, I'm having a bad day. I'm feeling really overwhelmed. Is very important, and just to have people listen to you is very important. So
Yes, exactly. Like recently, I created a WhatsApp group for mothers who are going through difficult times with like motherhood and children and things like that. So just creating groups either online or in person that can help people living with disabilities, that can be a good idea. Just something simple they can start by just saying, hey, how are you? Do you want to meet up? Just coffee or um, something simple can grow into something bigger that can be a source of help or camaraderie with other people.
yes, I agree. I agree. Sometimes having a conversation like this can really, really help someone. So you never know
Exactly.
how you're helping, but you're helping out in some way, right?
Yes. Yes, exactly.
I want to ask you because you told me before, and you told me when we decided to do this episode. You told me that you have projects, like you said before. You are a college student, almost done. Um, what kind of projects have you done? Have you done anything to demonstrate the help of mental health? Or what have you? I'm curious to know what kind of projects have you done? Because we did talk about that a little bit.
Yes, yes. I've participated in a group on campus. I forget the name of it, but it's like coffee after hours or something like that. And we go to a coffee shop in Detroit and just to meet different people and talk about everyday issues, especially with the political atmosphere going on. I feel like people need some um, fellowship and like-minded people to talk about different topics. And I thought that was very helpful for my mental health, but I felt also like I was helping the people that participated as well. So it's kind of like a mutual aid situation. And I thought that was very helpful. Um, what else? I have a podcast that I share mental health issues, and it's really about family and legacy and talking about different subjects around mental health, around family, around culture. And I thought that was a good way. Like you, Leo, you are supporting your community by interviewing different people and letting them share their stories. And that's kind of how the podcast originally started for me as well. And it started actually during the pandemic. And during the
Same here.
pandemic, it wasn't for you too, Leo?
Yeah, it started when, like, I don't know if I've ever shared this, but it started um because I started working with my DDI, and we don't work a lot. And Jasmine can attest to this. We don't work a lot in person. We work a lot in Zoom calls, and And one day I was just like, I have this tool now where I can record myself or record different sessions, and and um and why not invite people with disabilities to just share their stories and get rid of stigma a lot. So that's how this got started. So yes, it started around the pandemic, because the pandemic is when all this virtual stuff started happening. So
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And I feel like a lot of people felt isolated
Hmm.
because of like the lockdowns and mandates and things like that. So it was a way to say, well, even though we're locked in, even though it's, a crazy time, we're still here. We still need community. We still need like human contact. And I think that was a good way to encourage other people to speak up and ask for help and ask like for a friend. Um, and I'm also working to expand my network with people with disabilities. So if I can find more people to maybe introduce to you, Leo, to interview as well, that's something I'm looking forward to do.
Would love to be a guest, Jasmine, one day and share not only my story but also my projects and stuff that I have in mind. And also, I want to ask you, do you mind sharing the name of the podcast, so we can put it at the bottom of the description?
Yes, my podcast is called Rue Madame. Rue Madame is actually French.
Yes. And I'm sure
And
you'll share it with me so I can share it with our viewers, and we'll hop right
yeah,
along and catch an episode.
thank you,
That's
Leo.
awesome. I did not know that you had a podcast.
Yes. So for my information, I
Mm-hmm.
have a friend, but she lives in Spain, but she's a teacher who teaches children with disability. So
Oh,
most of her
really?
class, yes, and I thought it was really interesting. But I don't know if you interview people like in the context of the USA, or is it like,
No, it's worldwide. So,
oh, okay,
yes. Yes, this would
nice.
be awesome. 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 Okay, changing gears a little bit. What are your hopes for the future? Not only for Jasmine and your family, because I know you said you're a mom, but what are your hopes for the future? Not only for people with mental health, but people with disabilities and you as a whole. What are your hopes for Jasmine? Where does Jasmine see herself in 10 years?
In 10 years, oh my goodness, Leo.
Yeah. It's a question that I ask all my podcast guests that come on the show. So
Where do I see myself in 10 years? In 10 years, I would like to have obviously graduated next year. I would like to
hopefully,
have, yes, created my own um, therapy clinic where I am serving people with mental health issues or people living with disabilities. And I plan to specialize in that domain. And my demographic that I'll be like focusing on are youth. Like I said, I was a teacher for high school students, so I think they really need people that understand them, but also people with disabilities. Since I'm working with my DGI, which also helped me to understand the need for professionals in that domain. Um, Politically, for example, for our country, I'd like to see more people living with disabilities in our political system. So people, maybe president will be someone living with disabilities. I think that would be amazing to see. I would actually love to like study like the amount of people, famous people or known people who are representative of this population, because I think that would be a good motivation for other people to get into politics or get into positions of power so they can influence like how we live and how we recognize people with disabilities as important and worthy of our attention. So my own clinic, therapy clinic, and a better world for people um,
yes,
with
that's what
disabilities.
we all want. A better world, not only for people with disabilities, but just everybody. And I know that it's hard, and I try not to get into political things, because I know that there's people that think and think differently than I do or that anybody else does. But I
But
just
your
want
voice
to,
matters, Leo. Your voice matters. It's very
yeah,
important.
yes it does. Yes it does. But I also want to talk about and really touch on, we don't want division in the world. I see a lot of division. I see a lot of, it's this way and then there's that way. We want to bring people together because at the end of the day, this is a world for all of us. It doesn't matter if you're brown, white, yellow, it doesn't matter. You are a human being and we are all brothers and sisters at the end of the day.
Yes.
And we deserve to be different because the world would be boring if we were all the same way. So
Exactly, exactly. And it's interesting teaching my kids about what I'm doing, what my job is,
mhm.
and making them aware of their privilege as able-bodied people, and just growing up being mindful of the differences with everyone, if that's race or um, disability and things like that. So I think starting early and educating children, for example, but adults as well, can help a lot as far as like making us more empathetic with other people's daily lives.
Yeah, I think that empathy is what, because I have a hard, not that I have a hard time seeing, but I feel like a lot of people have a hard time with seeing themselves as a person with a disability. And
Oh,
it will happen to you. It will happen to you because, like I said during the presentations, and I've said this before. I don't know if you've heard it, but I've said this before, and you can comment on this after I'm done. I'm speaking on it. Um, but all of us are eventually gonna have a disability at one point. So it's very important for everybody to, like you said, not understand that just because you grew up an able-bodied person does not mean that you're going to be that way throughout your whole life. So being aware and treating people with disabilities with respect is is really important.
exactly. Yes. And you know what? It's mostly ignorance, I think, as well, because really, if you don't know what you don't know,
Yeah.
like a lot of people just don't know other people who are living differently or living with a disability. And so it's kind of like outside of their radar, outside of their, lives and concentration. Um, but for example, in my child's preschool, they were teaching the kids how to sign language. And I thought that was interesting
Mm-hmm.
because it's something simple to do. And since a lot of kids don't know how to speak clearly, using their hands is just another way of them to communicate. And also later in life, it would be useful for people who actually need to communicate that way. So I feel like, for example, I know that's a very far-fetched idea, but imagine if all of preschool or kindergarten kids started out learning sign language.
Yeah,
That would be amazing.
it would be really important because you would be preparing them for the rest of their lives because they could be at a job site where someone deaf comes in and doesn't have any form of communication and you can step in and and
Exactly.
have that help without having to hire somebody.
Right.
Yeah.
And exactly. So even in high school, let's say it starts in high school, like as a second language, it would be sign language, and like with Spanish or French or something else.
Yeah, because
Um,
because they don't they prioritize speaking French, but they should also prioritize teaching sign language in any time of your high school or your school career. I think it's important because, like you said, you might never know when you develop a friendship or a working relationship with someone that is deaf and someone that uses sign language to communicate. So that's very important. I'm glad you brought that up.
Exactly. And it's also a teaching moment for people who aren't living with disabilities, like to connect the two worlds. Like,
Yeah,
I don't, live with disability, but now I know sign language, and that's a
yeah.
way that I connect with someone who actually could use um, that information. So yeah, I think if we just integrated little things like that in our daily lives, people with disabilities wouldn't feel so invisible.
Speaking of people at an early age and people that are not connected with disability quite yet, um, what do you how do you feel that people, kids, for example, because you said you work with kids. I want to ask you this question really quick before we wrap up here. Um, how do you feel about having young kids interact with people, let's say in a wheelchair, or people that are autistic, just so they can um, know what it's like and kind of normalize a disability? I don't know if that makes sense. And kind of get young kids at an early age to understand disability, and maybe that can cut like bullying, because I know in high school and just in everyday life there's a lot of people that, like you said, if you don't know, you don't know and you don't live it. But if you live it and you see someone, it could help you become a better advocate.
Right.
Yeah.
I think also with kids, they get used to it the more you expose them to it. So I don't know how it works now. I don't know if, for example, children living with disabilities are integrated in like the general population of a school, or does it depend on the state how that works? But I don't remember, for example, growing up with classmates who were in a wheelchair or who needed assistance in other ways. Maybe I did, but I just didn't realize it. Again, maybe it was an invisible disability, which is more and more common, like with the increase in autism and things like that. But I think if we thought of better ways for children to just be exposed to other people and how they live is a good way to introduce that very young. So there wouldn't be a stigma, or like I think it would decrease bullying. So I had actually had a couple of questions for you, Leo,
Oh,
as
that's
far as
right. I forgot. Oh,
no
sorry.
problem.
We got sidetracked. But go ahead. Ask away.
Yes, I wanted to ask you, what are the different agencies or health professionals that help you in your life?
That's a good question. I'm used to coming on here and asking the questions, but she said she had a question for me. That's a good question. I use uh an agency called Cygenics. Uh, me and my uh me and my social worker, her name's Sandy. I'll be sharing this episode with her.
Oh,
But
good.
her name's Sandy, and she's amazing to work with. She's helped not only me, but she's also helped my family a lot with like communication, because she does speak Spanish too.
Oh,
Um,
good.
yeah, she does speak Spanish, so she helps my family a lot in that way, understanding, certain things. She's the one that helped me find this job with my DDI, actually. So she's been a big help. Cygenics is a big help, and I want to give them a shout out.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Another
I know
question.
you had another question.
Yes. What are your challenges or difficulties with the services that you receive, or just living with someone with a disability? What are your challenges or difficulties?
As far as the agency goes, I know there's a lot of people that do have problems with agencies and stuff because there's a lack of communication, a lack of staff too. And I want to sympathize with those people, but I don't have a problem. Like I said, Sandy, I want to give her a shout out because she's always on top of things. She's always texting me, saying that can we have um a meeting every month, or we try to have a meeting every month where she comes to my house and asks me what I need, and she asks me, what did you do throughout the month to reach your goal, and we talk about it. Um, she asks me how work is going. I tell her we have so many presentations lined up, and she's like, good. And she'll also ask my mom if I need anything. Like right now they're working on fixing my bathroom, making it more accessible for me to go in there with my chair and being more independent. So, she helped me out a lot, and she's always on top of things. So I guess to the people that uh, don't have that communication, because I know a lot of agencies just unfortunately they just come in and they give you a phone call and they say, okay, well, we'll see you in 6 months, and that 6 months never really happens. Um, to those people, I say, like Jasmine said, I like to quote you, Jasmine, your voice matters. Your voice matters. And if you are out there, and if you're not getting, and if you have a disability, and you and your family are not being heard, or not being serviced to in the correct way, please, please, please use your voice. Like I said, a lot of people in the disability community, especially here in Michigan, have the mindset that if they get stuck with an agency, that's the only agency around them. There's other agencies that you can contact. There are other people going through the same things as you, and there's ways that you can get what you need. Because the goal for this podcast, and the goal of what me and Jasmine do every day, is to make people more independent and have um, a lot of success in their lives. You know, this is why I created this podcast, because I wanted people that have a firstborn son that could have a disability to teach parents that not only because a lot of parents, when they hear the word disability, they think that their child and their life is over. Oh, he's never going to be able to play, he's never going to be able to interact. And, that's not the case. We live in a world where we have technology, we have, you know, we there's people like me and people like Jasmine working every day to help the world become better for people with disabilities. So there is hope out there. You just have to
Yeah,
sometimes um, use your voice.
exactly. Well said, Leo. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's all the questions I have for you right
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
Thank you, Leo.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing me. You kind of threw me off guard because I'm the one that asked the question. But no one has come on here and asked me questions. I like when people ask me questions.
Yes,
But
and
yeah,
your
thank
answers were
you. Thank
so much.
Thank you so much for that. Um, Before we wrap up, I want to ask you: do you have any form of um email or social media that people can reach out to you if they have any questions? I know that there's going to be a lot of people with mental health that are gonna enjoy this episode. So, if they have any questions for you, how can they reach out to you?
My podcast, Rue Madame, is on YouTube, and I'm not really on social media that much, but you can reach me by email, and I'm happy to share my email with you, and you can share it with your audience in the description, maybe. Yeah, and that's it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Jasmine, for being here. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us and why you got into it. I want to ask you one last question. Any word of
Sure.
final advice that you can give our audience before you take off?
Yes. To summarize, teaching children early about people living with disability and who may have different lives. It's like something you can educate your kids very early. And that's what I try to do with my kids, especially just explaining my job, explaining what I do is kind of like an opener for them to understand that they are in a world with different people, with different lives. Um, Contacting your political leaders to advocate for people with disabilities is incredibly important. Just sending maybe an email or letter or contacting them via their website can help, like help people with living with disabilities as well. And me working towards social work and highlighting people with mental illness is something I really want to dive into even more. I'm almost finished with my degree, but I'm developing my experience, not only with my DDI, but just people in my family, educating them. And yeah, those are ways I try to be an advocate for people with disabilities.
That's awesome, man. I really enjoy working with you when we have our meetings, And this is the way
Thank you, Leo.
Jasmine just started working with me, and so this is a way for us to get to know each other and share stories back and forth. So this was an awesome episode. I thank you for your time, Jasmine. Thank you for meeting us today. And if you wanna catch up to this episode or leave a comment, don't forget to leave a comment, subscribe, and we'll see y'all next time.